When Corrine called me, asking for my early recollections that led up to the development and the beginning of the PAB, I honestly had to wonder if this had happened in this lifetime or in a former lifetime of mine. As I read the information that comes to us from the congregation bulletin, it seems as though the Portfolio Advisory Board has always been with us. It's always been a piece of our history. That this group of highly sophisticated and competent women and their expertise has always been among us. So thank you from all of us out here doing our ministry stuff in very different areas of the country and in very different ways. On to the reflections about the beginnings. These beginnings were not casual. I will begin in 68, a year that has some significance for me and our congregation. And I'll speak alone to the seedings of the PAB, a word that was not even in our vocabulary at the time. I might also refer to this time as the time of some featherings of the idea, barely there in our consciousness, but deeply there in our subconscious, so it came quickly a warning into our experience. It seems upon remembering that time that deep in our souls were always the leanings toward social justice. A bit of history. In 68, our portfolio investment consisted of one page, double-spaced, all sustaining other religious congregations and their shrines. There had been counsel, mind you, from investment counselors directing our congregation toward this end. In 68, the chapter did wonderful things for us. Besides thrusting us into the dark night of the soul, which was an awakening for us, the chapter mandated that a finance board, advisory to the general council and to our congregation, be instituted, comprised of men with expertise in the world of finance. Fortunately for us, we selected 3 brilliant and highly skilled gentlemen who shepherded us through these unknown lands of high finance. They were Mr. Warren Heyer, Mr. John Henninger, and Mr. Edgar Burke, the latter now deceased. This board was of immeasurable help to us. They taught us, and we did teach them too. The latter was harder to do, I must say, because we were most naive. This board had been a great gift to us. The first thing they advised was to take this portfolio, simple as it was, and move it into the marketplace of the world. And we did this. Simultaneously, in 1968, this was a watershed year in the world and in the church. Rice University has a course entitled 1968. So important a year was it in the history of the world. First of all, there were the awakenings of Latin American theology of liberation. And the words, the Medellin, the conference at Medellin was in our memory and came to us as something new and exciting and very beautiful. There were many changing structures in our own time. We had women in our community already delving into the needs of the time. This was the end of the 60s. We want to recall that we had 900 women in our congregation under 33 years of age at the time. These women imbibed the unrest and the holy unrest of the 60s. They were talking a new language. Personally, I had come out of the cloister of the novitiate. I was about as close to the cutting edge of all these movements as I was to the ancient world of Byzantium. However, our women were asking questions of this chapter of 68, which went on for 3 long, hot summers. But each one of those summers took on a life of its own, and it took on a deepening as soon as we could get beyond the issues of religious garb and silence bells and regulations of various kinds. The world-changing ideas came flooding in upon us. The church in the modern world, the nuns in the modern world. These notions had depth and responsibility we all felt was ours to take in some mysterious way. I reflect on this as being a wonderful grace. Another event occurred, and several like it soon after, that was momentous for us, and that was the beginning of the divesting of our institutions. Now, we began with the most difficult, to be sure, the College of St. Dominic. Pertinent to this discussion was what we would do with the funds that we received from the sale of this institution. We decided immediately, and this was not a hard decision, that these funds would be earmarked as the beginning of our retirement fund. The more difficult and serious discussion was at the level of the General Council, at the level of the local provinces, at the level of the Leadership Council. What were we doing with the funds? Where were they being invested? So we brought these questions to the Finance Board. Also, we were wrestling with whether we should even have a retirement fund. Some of our women objected strenuously to our having that kind of security when the poor and the oppressed of the world did not. We were most naive in approaching the Finance Board. We reported to them that our sisters were concerned about where we would invest. So we said to them, we wanted to invest in lily pure institutions and corporations, those that did not abuse or misuse or oppress the poor in any way. Mr. Heyer put down his glasses and said to us, well, if you want to do that, you will also have to investigate the pencil companies that make the pencils that the corporations use to add up their figures. So we learned from that there may be another way to go. That way now has been highly sophisticated, and by you who go out now and then invest in these corporations for the very purpose of challenging them. We did not want to be involved in war making, in abusing people, in oppressing any more people. Our Finance Board was really wonderful. They hung in with us, teaching us every inch of the road on the high finance way. Those were hard lessons to learn. We had to learn what the Dow Jones was doing that day and what that meant for us. That was hard. It was very hard for me to have to begin to read that and know that that had significant meaning for us. And our sisters hung in with us too, challenging us every ounce of the way, calling us to look out and to help out and speak a prophetic word by our actions in the world. So much for trying to find the simple solution to investing. We kept investments in the banks and monitored those. As a corollary to this, we'd also decided to invest in people projects. I recall with some humor a casket company in the South. It's humorous because Dorothy Folliard prayerfully hoped that we would get a better kind of casket out of this, one not so gray and depressing looking, ones that we could be put down with a little more joy. I must here acknowledge Jean Burns and Dorothy Folliard, Noreen McHugh, Mary Therese McCarthy DeVault, and especially Catherine Noonan, the treasurer, for being such good listeners, for hearing the words spoken and unspoken by our women, so that the seedlings of this PAB could be sowed in very good ground, and it was. So speaking of Dorothy Folliard, she reflects with us that we have a history like this. Not just the Adrians, but all of us gathered here this night. First we were fossils, then chameleons, and now gadflies, and we're all the same people. The end of her quote. This calls us to reach out and interact with our world in a way that is very annoying to a lot of the status quo people and organizations and corporations, and most especially perhaps to the church. Not understanding this kind of a new way we have of interacting with the world. So it was from these uncertain, not exactly being able to be pinned down times, somewhat unclear discussions, and from the incredibly new questions that were being asked of us, that we allowed the new breath of responsible stewardship take on dimensions that we could never possibly have dreamed would come and lead us to where we are today. We had no idea that these breathings and these featherings and these beginnings would become institutionalized in the very next chapter, which decreed that we begin a portfolio advisory board, a board that would monitor the investments of the congregation, and most especially would monitor the women called to be responsible for that. Our nuns loved to monitor the women called to be responsible for that. But that was a wonderful thing for us. Now, I just know as I reflect back on this, that it was our women digging into their own truth that brought us the whole way to where we are. We had no wonderful, mysterious inspirations from God. This came out of their experience and their experience with our world, just as they were experiencing it. And it was this that incarnated in them, the movement that led us to this day. I'm eternally grateful to them.